Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, my guest is Garnet Schulhauser. Before I bring him on, I have to thank CuriosityStream. They are the award-winning destination for documentary series and features covering every topic from space exploration to adventure. Satisfy your thirst for knowledge anytime and anywhere with CuriosityStream. Their subscriptions start at only $2.99 a month. Just click the link in the description to sign up today. And please subscribe to Forbidden Knowledge News on lbry.com, our official backup channel. And you can always find us on all popular podcast platforms. That is also another great way to help support the show. And finally, thanks once again to everyone that has made donations. It's because of you that we can keep bringing you these amazing guests and information. Today, I want to welcome Garnet Schulhauser. He is a retired lawyer and author of several books who lives near Victoria on Vancouver Island with his wife, Kathy, and a little dog, Abby. After practicing corporate law for over 30 years in Calgary with two blue chip law firms, he retired in 2008, and his first book, Dancing on a Stamp, was published in 2012, which recounts how his life changed dramatically one day when he was confronted on the street by a homeless man named Albert, who was actually a wise spirit in disguise. This seemingly chance encounter launched a provocative dialogue with Albert, who disclosed startling new revelations about our true nature as eternal souls, the cycle of reincarnation on Earth, and the afterlife that awaits us all. Since the release of his first book, he has released 3 others in a series and has been active with book signing tours and speaking engagements, and has been interviewed on over 120 radio talk shows broadcast from the United States, Canada, UK, Ireland, and Australia. Garnet, welcome. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you for inviting me, Chris.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I really enjoyed the Laughlin Conference, which was the last time we saw each other. You had a really great presentation. I really enjoyed it. Your experiences are truly fascinating, and there's so many unique aspects that I found very intriguing about them. Until I had my own recent experience, I had a very hard time understanding the consciousness, astral, out of body aspects to this phenomenon. But I do have more insight now after having my own experiences. But I'm still learning and I'm still trying to understand everything. But let's start with your story. At the beginning of your story, let's explore as much as we can, because I know you have so many experiences that have happened to you throughout the years. But when, where, and how did this all start for you?
Well, I was still practicing law. It was in 2007, and I was walking down the street one sunny afternoon in May, and all of a sudden, out of the shadows, a homeless man just jumped right in front of me. I'd never seen this man before, but he was typical homeless man, long stringy hair, scraggly beard, dirty slept-in clothes. He looked like a typical street person. And I didn't go around him because he had these amazing, dazzling, sparkling blue eyes that shone like 2 little blue stars, really. And it was amazing. And his gaze was sending me this wave of, I can only describe it as pure, unconditional love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. So it was a very happy position to be in there. It was like I was caught in a time warp. I had no idea how long I stood there until he finally broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. But when I finally collected my wits, I decided I had to go into the store and find him. I needed to find out who he was and why he had stopped me. So I went into the store to find him. There was only one entrance and exit. He hadn't come out, but he was nowhere in the store. So I walked back out on the street, walked up and down for several blocks trying to find him, but he had disappeared into thin air. So the next day I went back to the same street, same time, hoping to find him. And after walking up and down for several blocks on that same street, I finally spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. And so I went up to him and I said, "Who are you? And why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." But then my skeptical lawyer brain kicked in and I said, "Why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because it looks like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish." Well, he just gave me a big smile and he said, "Looks can be deceiving." He said, "Because you look like you're a very successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade. He said, if you want to, turn around, go back to your office and see if you can find the answers you've been seeking all these years to all the big questions in life. See if you can find those answers waiting for you on all those emails from your clients on your computer. And so my intuition was screaming at me saying, well, what do I have to lose? Half an hour, I'm going to sit down and talk to this guy. So I did, sat down on the bench. We began a dialogue. And he told me early on his name was Albert, and it was really one of my spirit guides. And he said he had come into my life because he wanted to give me some revelations that basically pertain to all humans. And he wanted me to write a book about what he told me. So that dialogue went off and on for several months. He appeared to me in physical form for the first 3 times. And he was physical because I could reach out and touch him. He was solid. But he told me later that I was the only one who could see or feel him in physical form. So if somebody had been walking by that bench that day, they would see me sitting by myself, talking to myself, because they couldn't see him. Anyway, so this is the beginning of my relationship with Albert.
Now, before this, did you have any strange or paranormal or unexplained experiences in your life? Nothing at all?
Nothing at all. No, I had nothing at all that was unusual. I was just a straight-laced, stuffed shirt corporate lawyer who was, chasing material goods and status and all the things that a lot of people in my position do. And I wasn't religious or spiritual. I was raised as a Roman Catholic, but I had long since discarded that religion. And so I was sort of in no man's land, not, searching for the answers to all the life questions that everyone has at one point or another, like, who am I? Why am I here? What's my life purpose? And the big one, of course, is what happens to me when I die? Because we all know our physical bodies are going to die. That's the only guarantee in life, that and taxes. And so we all know that. Where do we go? I don't know. I know what the Catholic Church taught me as a child, and I had basically more or less rejected a lot of what they taught me as being nonsensical and illogical and arbitrary and so on. So I needed something new. And so Albert came along, and the way he explained to me the cycle of reincarnation and who I am and why I'm here, why you're here, why everyone's here, actually. And it just made eminent sense. He was speaking the truth. I just felt that in my heart, and I knew that he was telling me the real goods. This is really how it works.
So let's talk about those first encounters, those physical encounters that you had with Albert. What kind of information did he kind of start out talking with you about?
Well, he just explained, basically starts off by saying, the big question is, who am I? And he said, well, you're an eternal soul, just like every other person on the street, every other human. And he said, you're an eternal soul who originally came from what he called the spirit side, which is a very high vibration dimension, one of the highest. That's where we came from. And he said, so as a soul, we're eternal. We come here to earth and have a journey in a human body. And when our physical body dies, we go back to the spirit side. And so that's who we are. We're eternal. Our physical bodies will die. We've probably had many different incarnations where we've been through different physical bodies with different human bodies. And every time it's the same thing. You're born, you live through your life, your physical body dies, you go back to the spirit side, and then you can then plan your next step. And the reason that we're here and what our purpose is that we're here to grow and evolve as souls. So we before we incarnate, we prepare a life plan, which sets out the major aspects of our new life, like the place where we're going to be born, the identity of our parents, first language we learn, who our siblings and grandparents and uncles and aunts are. That sort of sets the stage for our adventure, if I like to call it an adventure, really what it is. And the reason that we chose a life is to experience certain challenges and learn certain lessons, or try to learn lessons while we're on that journey. So it's not just sort of an arbitrary, well, I'm going to fling myself into planet Earth and see what happens. We have goals in mind, and we don't always achieve those goals because even though we plan the basics in our life plan, once we're born, we forget that we have a life plan. And so now most of us are sitting here and saying, well, so who put me here? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? And that's intentional. That's why Earth is such a tough school, is because we're not allowed to know what it was that we hope to achieve. And then once we're sort of living on Earth, we have free will to act. So we don't have a memory of why we came here. We have free will to act. And so away we go. And sometimes we'll be on course the way we wanted to. Oftentimes we'll stray off course, but it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, no matter how many wrong turns a person makes, they'll always end up back on the spirit side. And from there, you can regroup, have a look at your past life and say, okay, well, these things I did good, these things I did badly. And then you can plan another incarnation, try to do better, or stay in the spirit side, whatever you want. And so that explains why we're here. He didn't tell me the particulars of why I was here, other than to say one of my missions was to write books based upon what he tells me. But aside from that, he doesn't give me any personal advice. And so we have to sort of, I'm like everyone else. I don't know. I have to go by every day trying to figure out what I should be doing other than in the broad picture of broadcasting Albert's revelation. So that's really what he said. The other important thing was, which really reflected on my religious upbringing, was I was taught that God put us here for whatever reason he had, and that God manipulates and controls the events on our planet, makes rules for us to follow. And if we don't follow those rules and don't make amends, when we die, God will judge us. And if we were bad, he'll send us to an awful place called hell. That's what I was taught as a kid. Okay. I rejected that. And Albert clearly said, no, God didn't put us here. God doesn't control events. God is an observer. I like to refer to it as a source. The source is an observer. We chose to come here. The source is sort of watching what's going on, knows that we're trying to grow and evolve, doesn't interfere, doesn't make rules for us, and there's no judgment after death. The source of God does not judge you after you died. The only person who judges you is yourself, based upon your life review and when you see what happened. And so that's a big, huge departure for what Christian holy men have been preaching for centuries. And it just made a lot of sense to me. And it was actually refreshing because, the thought, when I was a kid, the thought of, that if I would die in my sleep one night and I had sins in my soul, I could end up in an awful place called hell. That was frightening. And of course, the Christian church has used the prospect of hell, punishment after death, as a big sort of stick to whip people into shape, to make them come to church, make them follow the rules. The rules they say are God's rules are really man-made rules. The religious holy leaders create these rules, trying to control the masses, keep them in line, make sure they come to church every Sunday, and empty their pockets into the church collection plate. That's sort of their whole scheme. And Albert just says, well, that's where they're coming from. That's not the way it works. And you need to know that this is how the cycle of reincarnation on Earth works.
That meshes a whole lot with a few of the recent interviews I've done with people who've had near-death experiences, who have gone through these life reviews and said that they've agreed for these certain soul contracts. Now, is there any karmic aspect either while you're here on Earth or while you're doing these soul contracts, to where if you didn't live your life a certain way, or you've done things that go against
Yeah.
the laws of the
Karma,
source?
karma comes into play when you are planning your next incarnation, because if you have what I would call, if you accumulated negative karma by being bad through a number of lives, no one makes you come back, but you have a sort of a moral imperative to say, I'm a good soul. I'm going to try to make amends. I'm going to try to rebalance the karma, the negative karma I accumulated. So I'm going to go back and try to change that. But you don't have to. If you leave a life and you have a bunch of negative karma, and you say, to heck with planet Earth, I'm not going back there again, you don't have to. But most souls will say, I want to go back and try to do some good and alleviate my negative karma. So that it's really a moral imperative for souls.
Now you say that you can say to heck with planet Earth. There are other planetary options that we can take. We can incarnate as other species. Is that something
Absolutely.
that's possible?
We can incarnate as different species on planet Earth. If you want to incarnate as a cat or a dog or a horse, you can. Chances are, if you're a human now, you've probably already gone through the animal thing, because a lot of souls, when they first come new to planet Earth, they'll take a very simple life like an animal, because it's much less complex. And then gradually they'll move up to the most complex life on Earth is a human life. As you know, we have lots of emotions. And, if you're a rabbit, you don't have to worry about going to school or making mortgage payments or saving for retirement. Humans have to worry about all those things and many more. And so it's a much tougher kind of life to live through. But it's not just planet Earth. There's billions and billions of planets that have life forms in our universe. You can go to any one of those planets you want, incarnate into any life form that you want. The choice is entirely yours. No one makes you do anything, and it's entirely up to you. So if you get tired of planet Earth, you can go to another planet and try your luck there.
Now, as far as our soul contracts and the choices that we've made to come to do on this planet, there's not a set path. We can always change our own timelines and change what we're actually doing as we go through our incarnation. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. Our life plans or soul contracts are not etched in stone. So as you go through life, you can change it. And how that happens is that um, every night when we sleep, our souls temporarily leave our physical bodies and go back to the spirit side. There we have a huddle with our spirit guides, other counselors, and it's sort of like, okay, how am I doing so far? Should I change anything? How do I make better progress? And so during those times, we can adjust, fine tune, or make major changes to our life plan if we so choose.
That's very interesting. Now, I want to get into more of your experiences with Albert. After the physical contact occurred, what happened next? How did these astral interactions occur?
Well, it was after I'd finished the manuscript for my first book, and Albert sort of disappeared out of my life for a while, and then all of a sudden he popped back in a very
How long was that? How long was he gone?
oh, it's just only a few months. It wasn't very long. It seemed long to me, but when I look back on it, it wasn't very long. And he was there. He just wasn't sort of making direct contact with me. So then he came back into my life. I was sleeping in my bed. I woke up. I heard a noise, I guess. Woke up, sat up, and there, standing in the doorway of my bedroom, was this ghost-like ethereal figure. And I was like, "What is this?" As it moved closer to my bed, I could see it was Albert, my homeless man Albert, but he was in astral form. And I said, "Hi, Albert, what's happening? What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I've come to take you on a series of astral trips because I want to take you to the spirit side, to other places in the universe, to other places on planet Earth, so that you get a better idea of what's in the universe and about life in the universe, what's going on planet Earth, and what happens on the spirit side." So then he literally reached out, grabbed my astral hand, pulled my astral body out of my physical body. I turned around and looked, Chris, and there my physical body is still sound asleep. So here I am in astral form. And I said, "Okay, Albert, lead the way." So we just basically rose up through the ceiling, up through the clouds. When you're in astral form, you pass through walls, ceilings like this, like it's not there. I mean, you're not physical. So we went through, and the first place he took me was to the spirit side, which I ended up in this beautiful meadow, like incredibly beautiful, like more so than any place you could ever imagine on Earth. Majestic trees and wildflowers, and it was just a beautiful scene. And there he took me up. We walked up a hill, and at the top of the hill, I looked down at the bottom. I could see this group of souls there. So he led me towards them, and as I got closer, my heart skipped a beat because I could see that these souls were some of my loved ones who had passed on, like my mother and father, brother, grandparents, aunts and uncles. They were there as basically my welcoming party. So they just wrapped their arms around me, gave me nothing, smothered me in unconditional love, and basically said, "Welcome here to the spirit side. You're not here for good, but you're just here on a visit. So we wanted to let you know that we love you and everything is going to be fine. And don't worry about your death because you're going to come back here and you'll be with us again." So it was really quite a nice confirmation about what he had told me before about how everyone goes back to the spirit side, so that people who are wondering what happened to my mom or my dad who's died, they're over there and they're doing
Right.
very well. And sometimes they'll try to contact people. They can't always do that because people aren't always listening. But anyway, so he took me to the spirit side. Then the next thing was he introduced me to the Council of Wise Ones, which is a group of very wise, advanced souls. There was 11 of them in this meeting, and their job is to oversee all the incarnations on planet Earth, so that when a soul is planning to do a new incarnation, they develop their life plan or soul contract, and then somebody from the council will review it to make sure that it's not too onerous. I mean, if people take on too many challenges, tough challenges in the life, it may backfire and they may end up, giving up or committing suicide or whatever. And so they're there to sort of give some guidance as to what is a good life plan for every particular soul. And every
Now,
soul is different because we're all at different levels.
I want to ask you before you get any further with that. I should have asked you from the beginning. Was the physical contacts with Albert, was it psychic communication, or were you just talking to each other? And at any point, did it become just a psychic communication?
Yeah, the first three times when he was there physically, we were basically speaking like you and I are verbally. And then when he came back into my life, the next time it was just by telepathy. He was just a voice in my head. And so that's how we communicated for the most part. And when I said to him, well, why did you show up in my life as a homeless man? And he said it was just his way of introducing me to him. And that if he had just out of the blue started talking to me as a voice in my head, I probably would have thought I was going crazy. So this way it was sort of like there's this physical guy and I'm talking to him. So when he started communicating by telepathy, I recognized his voice. I knew who he was. I was very comfortable. I knew I wasn't going crazy, and it was sort of like, okay, I get who you are, and let's carry on.
Okay, very interesting. Now let's pick up where you were talking with this council that
Yeah. So the council's job is to, as I said, to oversee all the incarnations. So what they do is provide guidance and advice to souls who are planning, who prepared their soul contract or their life plan, and they're planning to incarnate, and they want to make sure that your life, the life you've chosen, isn't too onerous or too easy. Because if you have too easy, if you plan a really cushy life, like born into a wealthy family and you have no material worries and everything is just very easy, you probably won't learn very much. So they try to sort of steer the souls into a midway course where it's not too easy, not too hard, and a life that they can likely learn something. But the final choice is the soul. So if you choose to ignore the advice of the council and do what you want to do, you can do it. I mean, they won't stop you. And at the end of the day, you'll probably find out when you come back after your body dies, you'll come back and probably say, okay, they were right. Should have followed their advice. But anyway, most souls will follow their advice just because they're so wise. They're very compassionate and loving. And so what they're doing is trying to do the best for each soul and help them pick out a life that they can learn the most from.
now what are they? Are they celestial beings? Are they angels, or were they once human?
No, they're souls like us, but they're very advanced. They've had a lot of incarnations on Earth. They basically graduated from nurse school. So the reason that they're so knowledgeable because they have a number of lives on Earth, and so they know what can go wrong, how people can make wrong turns, and so they have this knowledge. But they're just very advanced, wise souls like you and I.
Now, would you consider any of these entities extraterrestrial, or interdimensional beings, something different than that incarnates on our planet?
Well, they may well have incarnated as extraterrestrials in the past. Right now, they're existing on the spirit side as all souls do, as beings of energy. So it's just a being of energy, and souls there can choose to appear to other people however they want. So these ones appeared as sort of white-haired, older, wise people. That's how they appear to me. Okay, but they've had incarnations, many on Earth and probably in other places, and so they just have a lot of experience in incarnating on the denser planes, which and we all need that sort of advice before we pick a life on this planet.
Now, in some of these experiences, you got to, I guess, experience what some people call the Akashic records. Could you explain a little bit about what that is and what your experience was with it?
The Akashic records are basically the records of every life that has ever been lived anywhere in the universe. So in the Akashic records, when you go to the spirit site, you can go there and you can review all the lives you've ever had on Earth or any other place. You can review all the lives of anybody else if you're curious, and so it's a huge source of information. What happened when I went there the first time was that Albert showed me it was sort of it was like a big holographic globe that sort of was hovering in the middle of the room, and then he knew how to work it. I didn't, and so then it was like he was showing me some episodes from my current life, and also some from previous lives. And it's like watching a 3D movie. You can watch it like sort of like you can actually sort of jump right into the picture if you want. You can watch it quickly. You can go in slow motion. You can go in any order you want. And it's the kind of thing that happens when you have a life review. Is when you first go back over to the spirit side after your physical body dies. You have a life review where you go over the life you just finished in detail. And that's designed to let you know, okay, well, this is where I went wrong. This is where I should have done something differently. It also shows you the good things you've done, not just the bad. And the neat thing about a life review is that you not only get to see what happened, like you're watching a 3D movie, but you can actually get to feel the thoughts, hear the thoughts, and feel the emotions of the people you interacted with. So, for example, if you're looking at an episode of your life and you said something mean to a neighbor or a co-worker, you actually get to feel their hurt and their surprise that you would choose mean words to speak to them. That you actually get to feel their emotions. That really hits home, because then you may have gone through that episode without even giving it a second thought. You may not have intended to be mean to anyone. When you see the life review, you say, "Oh, I didn't realize I was offending that person so much, and I didn't really want to, but I'll keep that in mind for the next go round."
Now, when it comes to these higher dimensional beings, um, let's talk about the other end of the spectrum. What are your thoughts on these lower dimensional beings that some might call demons, or malevolent spirits? Um, do those have any interactions with humans that you know of on Earth, and agendas or anything that you have been told from your spirit guides to look out for specifically or not interact with?
Yeah, the answer is quite simple. Albert says that there are no evil spirits or demons as such. He says that because when souls leave their bodies, whether it's on this planet Earth or wherever, on the spirit side, there's nothing but unconditional love. So there's no negativity, no negative emotions, no suffering, no nothing. So there are no evil spirits. The devil doesn't exist. Demons don't exist. Everyone is, once you're on the spirit side, it's just nothing but unconditional love. So he says you don't have to worry about anyone. He does say that, for example, people will think that if they're in a haunted house, they'll think it's evil spirits or demons doing things. He just says that that's most of the time in a haunted house, someone has died there and they're still a bit confused about where they are, and they haven't maybe quite realized that they've left their physical bodies. And so they'll often do things like, slamming doors and making footsteps and turning lights on and off. And what they're trying to do is just make themselves known to the people who are living there, because those people can't see them. And so they get a little frustrated. And so some of the things that people say, well, that's the result of an evil spirit. It's not. It's just a temporarily lost and confused soul who's left their body, and their spirit guides are trying to take them back to the spirit side, and eventually they do. No one has ever left there. No one's ever lost forever. It's just a very temporary thing. But because there's no linear time on the spirit side, it's an illusion on earth plane. So if someone is haunting a house for 200 years, it's just a blink of an eye on the spirit side. It seems longer to us.
That's very interesting. So you don't think there are any kind of lower realms that we would have to worry about? What are your thoughts on like things like demonic possession? Do you think it's some sort of just mental disorder that people are experiencing?
That's what Albert says. He says it's a mental disorder. There is no such thing as a spirit invading somebody's body, taking possession, and making them do awful things. He says that doesn't happen. I mean, it makes for good movies like The Exorcist, but he says this doesn't happen. It's a mental disorder.
Very interesting. Now, you were also told of a human civilization that was able to make a shift to a new Earth. Was this our human civilization, or was this another civilization?
Well, it was a human civilization on Earth, and it was a long time ago. And this civilization existed in Central America, and they had a fairly good sort of society. They didn't have a lot of violence or crime or anything, and they were pretty harmonious. And what happened was that one day, one of their scouts discovered that there was a, a barbarian army approaching their village, and this barbarian army was they were warlike. They just wanted to conquer everything. They had weapons. This village didn't have any weapons, couldn't defend themselves. So their leaders sort of connected with spirit, got them all into a big open field beside their village, where they went into a very deep meditation. And then on cue, they just what happened was a big fog rolled in. When the fog dissipated, they were in a different place. They were in the new Earth. The new Earth is just our planet in a higher vibration dimension. So they rose up to this new Earth, and I had a visit there with not them, but their ancestors. The new Earth people live for 200 or 300 years, but they eventually do perish. But the new Earth is great. It's like no crime, no violence, no one has to work. Everything is provided for by the society, and that's so it's a lovely place. That's the place where every human should aspire to go. And how you
And
get
this is
there?
an astral realm, right? This is an
Yes,
astral.
it's in a different dimension. Yeah, It's physical, but it's a much higher vibration rate. Okay, so it's higher than Earth, not as high as the spirit side. It's somewhere in between, and so it is a physical realm, but much higher vibration rate, and it's a lovely place. And the way Albert says that humans on our Earth can get there is by raising your vibrations high enough to match the vibrational rate of the new Earth, and then once that happens, you just pop up there. He said it's like, imagine holding a cork underwater. When you release the cork, it just pops up to the surface. And that's how we will ascend if we ever get our vibrations up high enough. And a lot of humans, besides this tribe from Central America, a lot of humans have gone to the new Earth. They don't generally go in such big groups, but they'll sometimes go in twos or threes or individually. So a lot of people have already made it. And he says it's open for you and I and everyone else to get there if we focus on raising our vibrations.
Now, in your third book, you go into how Albert actually took you to meet consciousness of the Earth, Gaia.
Yes.
I'd love to hear about that.
Well, Gaia is the consciousness of our dear Mother Earth, our planet. And it surprised me a bit because I didn't know that our planet had a consciousness, but it does. A very sort of wise and compassionate spirit, if you want. I'm not sure how to describe it. But Gaia is fiercely protected of all of her animals, all of her creatures, including humans, but all the other ones as well, and her plants. She wants to have a very balanced ecosystem. She wants to have everything in harmony. And she's distressed over the fact that humans are throwing everything off kilter because we pollute. We pollute the air, we pollute the water, pollute the soil. We deforest the forests and take away animal habitat. So we're really basically bad news for the planets on or the animals on our planet. So she's very distressed at that. And she said to me that you may have noticed that over the last while, there's been an increase in the number and intensity of natural disasters on Earth, like hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, tornadoes. She says that's not by accident. She says she is trying to manipulate things to make us, to give us a warning shot across our bow, to make us realize as humans that if we don't change our ways and stop our pollution, it will end badly for us. And so she's basically manipulating these things, trying to get us to realize that we have to stop our pollution and stop disseminating the habitat of the animals. We need to respect animals on our planet, stop abusing them, and for sure stop abusing one another, because we do that. We're one of the few races in the universe where we abuse our fellow humans, with crime, violence, genocide, wars, whatever. And so she's really upset at that. And she really wanted me to take the message back to people that we really have to stop our ways and stop polluting Mother Earth so that we can all get back into a balanced ecosystem. You see, before humans way back when were okay, they didn't really cause much damage. But after the Industrial Revolution, our ability to pollute Mother Earth increased exponentially. And so we have a way bigger capacity to pollute Mother Earth. And so that's really the problem. It arose after the Industrial Revolution. Back in the caveman days, we didn't really pollute anything. We didn't have the capacity. I mean, we had a few campfires, but that's about it. And so we've really become a real problem for Gaia. And she's really trying to, by increasing the intensity and number of natural disasters, she's trying to wake us up. And what we call climate change, that's really Gaia trying to get us to wake up and smell the roses.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thought. Now, you also on these encounters had met mythical creatures such as Sasquatch, fairies. Could you tell
Mm-hmm.
us a little bit about some of those encounters?
Yeah, the Sasquatch, I've always sort of been hearing about people saying that the Sasquatch exists, whether it's called Sasquatch or Yeti or Abominable Snowman or whatever. They have different names. So Albert showed me, he just wanted to show me that Mother Earth has a lot of surprises up her sleeve that we're not aware of. And so I actually had a meeting with a Sasquatch. I was in astral form and she was in physical form. And she basically said that they've been, they're the result of an experiment that ETs that visited planet Earth a long time ago. They crossed human sperm with another primate, ended up with being the Sasquatch, and they've lived among humans for centuries, for eons, and they're very afraid of humans because they view us as being a savage and ruthless, aggressive race. So they don't want anything to do with us. And they're very peace loving. They live close to nature. They don't have weapons, but they communicate with each other by telepathy. And they are just waiting for the day that humans change their ways so they can come out and openly live among us. If they try to do that now, they're afraid that they would be put in a cage and paraded in as a circus sideshow. And of course, they don't want that. And
Now,
so
this was like an astral version of a Sasquatch that you were communicating with?
no, it was actually a physical version.
Oh, what
Yeah,
was okay. Now,
I was.
how did this occur?
Albert and I were in astral form. This Sasquatch was in physical form, so we had the conversation. We would communicate by telepathy. But she was in physical form, and her basic message was, "Gee, you know, if humans would quit their aggressive and violent ways, we could live together. In the meantime, we're going to hide." And they hide in underground cities, and they're able to avoid detection because they have what she described as sort of like an animal radar. They can detect other animals for several miles away. So they can detect humans who are in the forest trying to find them. They can detect us miles away and hide. So that's why, I mean, there has been some glimpses of Sasquatch. There have been some footprints that people have found, but for the most part, they're very careful. And so that was her story. Like, you know, you guys, we're not going to make ourselves openly available to you until you change your ways.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated with Sasquatch and Bigfoot and how it somehow sometimes seems to intertwine with a UFO phenomenon. And it makes sense how you said it. You know, if they were this species that was interbred with some type of ancient extraterrestrial species, how they would be advanced and possible have this phenomenon follow along with them. And you also had an encounter with a fairy, right?
Yes, it
What was
was.
that?
On our astral trips, Albert took me to Ireland, and there I had an encounter with a fairy, a little person. She's about 3 feet tall. She was like a tiny, perfect china doll, like very, very pretty and pristine. And she says that her race, the fairies, used to live openly in Ireland. And then one day, humans, our race, came along, and at first they thought that humans were just bigger versions of themselves. So they welcomed us with open arms. They soon found out that we were violent and aggressive, and we would just soon kill the fairies and abuse them as like them. And so then they ended up living in underground cities as well. And again, they, like the Sasquatch, they don't want to have open contact with us because they're afraid of us. And occasionally they are spotted, but her message was very much the same as the Sasquatch, which was, you know, if humans would only change their ways, we'd love to be able to come out in the open and dance on the surface of the planet, dance in the sunshine, dance in the rain, and enjoy our planet rather than having to hide from humans. So it was really a very two different examples, two different creatures that exist in mythology. A lot of people just think, oh, that's just a legend and they don't really exist. But Albert showed me that they do. Both the Sasquatch and the fairy, they actually do exist. And someday they will, if we ever change our ways, they will live openly among us.
Now, as far as what they look like, was the Sasquatch your typical, is what is described as a Sasquatch? And what about a fairy? What did the fairy look like?
Well, the fairy looked like a little human. It looked like a little fully developed human, about 3 feet tall. So you couldn't, if you didn't know, you didn't have a measuring stick to figure out how high they were, you would just think they were humans. So they look very much like humans. Sasquatch are like, they have, they're quite tall. They have, their bodies are covered in sort of thick brown fur. They have short, stubby, almost no necks, and their faces are probably more ape-like than they are human, for sure. Anyway, so that's what they look like, so not too different from what the people who've seen them, how they describe them. It's very similar to that.
Very interesting. Now, we've got a few minutes left. I'd like to get into some of the things they told you about our ancient past, such as things like Jesus, Mary, Lucifer. They've told you all kinds of things about truths about the Bible. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the most profound things that they've told you?
Well, he confirmed. In fact, I've had a couple of meetings with Jesus on the spirit side. Jesus was he was a very advanced soul who chose to incarnate as the human Jesus Christ. You know, back 2,000 years ago, he chose to do that because he wanted to sort of elevate humanity into a sort of a higher realm. He wanted to basically give us a kick in the pants and try to get us to become more spiritually enlightened, to
Now,
love one another.
how did you come into contact with Jesus through an astral?
Albert introduced me to him.
He introduced you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, he's still on the spirit side. I mean, he's there. You can, when you cross over, you can have a meeting with him if you want. Like, he's very accessible. But he was explaining to me why he came to Earth, and so he's a real life person. The miracles that the Bible ascribes to him, like turning water into wine, walking on water, raising people from the dead. He said, "Yeah, I did that because," he said, that he was able to. He learned how to focus his thoughts into very powerful beams of energy. So his beams of energy could manipulate matter and energy, and that's how he created his miracles. And so he actually did do those things. The miracles didn't come from the source; they came from Jesus Christ, who just had this amazing mental capabilities to manipulate matter and energy. So that was it was good to hear that. He also told me that, contrary to what the Bible currently says, that he was married to Mary Magdalene. They had 3 kids. The Bible, the scriptures originally had that in there. Subsequent religious leaders basically deleted that. They decided, leaders of the Catholic Church back then decided that it would be better to show Jesus as being celibate, never married. So that's how they erased all the references to marriage and children. And he also said that his birth was a natural birth, that Mary and Joseph had typical sexual union that humans have. That's how he was conceived. So it wasn't a miraculous conception, contrary to what the scriptures say. The church wanted to make him sort of a very mystical, magical kind of entity. And so they decided, okay, he was an immaculate conception, a virgin birth, and that they ended up deciding that he was the Son of God. Well, he's not that. He's a very advanced soul. But anyway, so Albert says that there was a lot of things originally in the scriptures that have been redacted, deleted, altered. So the scriptures that we see now are in many ways quite different, and the leaders there very deliberately changed it. And back in those days there were no photocopiers, no computers. So if somebody had a manuscript of the scripture, there may be only 1 or 2 copies. It was easy to tear those up and do new ones and say these are the scriptures. And so it was easy to change it. Nowadays you couldn't change that because there'd be a record of it on somebody's computer. So they altered they altered the story of Jesus to make it a better story for his followers. That's why they did it. And Jesus said, my core message, which is like, love other people, treat others as you'd want to be treated. That core message is good, he said, and they've been able to convey that. But he said they kind of hijacked the agenda with their bringing in all kinds of rules, regulations, and laws that they say came from God, which a lot of them are okay. Some of them are just nonsensical. And the concept of hell and punishment and so on was really their way of saying, this is how we can control the masses, how we can get them to come into our church and have them do what we want to do. So he was upset at that aspect. He was happy that they have been doing some good things, like in terms of charities around the world and trying to get people to be kind and generous and compassionate. That part is good. But the other part, he just said, well, that's humans. They tend to go off track, and they did.
Now, on the other end of that spectrum, what about Lucifer? What can you tell us about any information you've received?
Well, Lucifer has a bad reputation, as you know. A lot of people equate Lucifer with the devil, with Satan, with a fallen angel, that he was, he got into a fight with God and he fell back into hell. I actually met with Lucifer, and he's actually a very benevolent angel, who doesn't cause evil, doesn't want evil to happen, actually works actively behind the scenes to try to alleviate evil on our planet. So it's basically 180 degrees from what a lot of people believe about Lucifer. So it's really quite enlightening. He's really a very kind, compassionate, benevolent angel who just had a bad rap, really. And I'm not sure how that all started, but and there's really not much you can do about it other than just sort of showing up on Earth and saying, guess what, I'm Lucifer and I'm really a good guy. If he did that, most people would think that was just special effects created in Hollywood. So why bother?
So, what do you think is the deal with all this talk of satanic cults these days, and the satanic craze that has been, perpetuating for decades? That there are these elites that practice this, and in control of everything. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there are people who worship Satan, for sure, and that's just their free choice. I mean, how they got there, I have no idea. It doesn't reflect reality, but it seems to work for them in terms of what their agenda is, in terms of having the satanic cult. I don't think that they control the world or anything. I mean, I think they're small little groups, and they do their own thing. And I mean, people can believe in whatever you want. I mean, some people believe the moon landing never happened. Some people think the Earth is flat. Some people think the Earth is hollow and there's a civilization in there. Some people think there's a secret space program and there's a colony on Mars. I mean, people believe all kinds of different things, and that's just the human nature.
That's very interesting. Now, I want to talk about some more of the things that you were told, with your travels with Albert, such as you actually had encounters with Muhammad. You were told a little bit about Mary Magdalene, the dance. Just talk a little bit about some of the things from your most recent book and your encounters.
Well, yeah, I did have an encounter with Muhammad. He was, of course, is on the spirit side, and I asked him how he felt about the way Islam had developed since he left the earth. And he says, well, there are a lot of good things about it, but he was really upset about two things. And the first thing he said was he was really upset about how uh, some people were using Islam as a religion as an excuse to subjugate and abuse women. And he said there's a lot of countries, as you know, where women have to cover their faces, their whole bodies, or whatever, can't get a job, can't drive a car. Uh, that's slowly changing, but that's really, he said, I'm really upset at that because he always believed that women were equal to men. And so somehow some of the religious leaders in Islam decided to use that religion as an excuse to carry out their own agenda, which is a patriarchal society where men are dominant and women are subservient. So he was upset at that. He was also upset at how some of the Islamic followers, who we would call Islamic terrorists, are using that religion as an excuse to inflict pain and agony and death and destruction on other people who aren't of the same religion. And he said that was never his intention. He wanted to have a peaceful religion where everyone, all Muslims, would respect all other religions, Christians, Jews, Hindus, whatever. And he said, so he's really upset at how that, and that's not all Muslims, but that's a small group of extremists who are using religion as an excuse to carry out their agenda. So he was really a very wise guy, and he was really quite honest about how things had developed, and so it was really quite enlightening. And then Mary Magdalene, I had a private conversation with her. She said that she was a bit upset at the fact that some religions or some people in the Christian religion had depicted her as a prostitute. And she says that was never the case. She was, she was a very chaste kind of lady. She married Jesus. She was very happy with Jesus. They had 3 kids. She was, not in any way a loose woman. And she said the reason they did that was because in that patriarchal society, when they were crafting the sort of the stepping stones of the church, the basics of the church, they decided that it wasn't appropriate to have a woman as a close confidant to Jesus. That just didn't fit in with their notion of how the world worked. You had to be a man. And so they basically tried to write her out of the scheme by saying that she was a loose woman and she was a prostitute. And so she just sort of hung around Christ, which was, they were just trying to denigrate her, trying to put her into a lesser position so that the 12 apostles, all men, could take the prominent role. But she said, in point of fact, she was Christ's closest confidant, and she was very close to him, advised him all the time on what was going on, and that just didn't come through in the Bible.
Wow, that's something that you don't hear every day. Very interesting information there. Now, there's an aspect today going on where a lot of people are kind of approaching a more spiritual look at their lives. We also have the other side where this technological takeover is taking over, and it's kind of become a new religion of worshiping technology. Now we have a few different ways that our future could go. Some look very concerning, but I think we have a few different timelines that we could choose from. Do you think that within our lifetime we could see a more spiritually open society that would actually be open to communication with some of these spirit guides within our lifetimes?
Yes, I think so. And I'm not too sure about the timing, but Albert has assured me, or has basically said that he's optimistic about what's going to happen with the human race. Like we're at a crucial point where we have weapons of mass destruction. We could destroy all humanity, all life on planet if we let it loose. And so, and too much of that arises from people letting their negative emotions get out of control, like fear, anger, hate, jealousy, and so on. So he says he's optimistic that we can actually get over this hump and become more spiritually enlightened. He didn't really say in my lifetime. Of course, my lifetime's a lot shorter than yours, Chris. But he is optimistic that we will work it out. But we all have to work together, one person at a time, one step at a time, and eventually he sees good things for us, where we can all get rid of the violence and the crime and so on, and start to love one another, become more spiritually enlightened. And that's been happening. Like, I mean, in the last probably 30 years. 30 years ago, if I wrote my books, well, I wouldn't have written my books, but if I had, nobody would read them because people were just not of that mindset. But over time, more and more people were becoming spiritually enlightened. More and more people are searching for answers. Maybe they rejected their religion that they were raised with, or maybe they don't have one. They're searching for answers, and they're finding answers in the spiritual realm, in books, in lectures, in radio shows like yours. And so that's really changed things, and there's more and more people being aware of that. And so people like you who are with your radio show, you're sort of trying to get the message out to people. There's lots of hosts similar to you that have radio shows, lots of people who write books, and so the movement is picking up. And maybe in your lifetime you'll see it. I'm not sure that there's enough time in my lifetime, but anyway, he's optimistic. We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, there's some very interesting things happening right now. And I think that there's a lot of people that desire to find out more about this information. What advice would you give if someone, because, I guess according to many people and my own beliefs, that everyone has these spirit guides that we can contact at any time. What would your advice be if someone wants to actually get in contact with one of their spirit guides?
Well, it's not as easy as it sounds. Now, you're right. Everyone has two or three or more spirit guides. You have spirit guides throughout your life. Some of them stay with you from birth till death, and some change as your life develops depending on your needs. So there's a bit of a rotating crew, but they're always there with you 24/7. Their job they're basically coaches. They're there to coach you in terms of your journey. And so they know what you put in your life plan, your soul contract. And so they can send you messages saying, when you come to a fork in the road, they can say, take the left fork, not the right fork. And so they're trying to guide you in a way that will be most fulfilling for your journey. The trouble is most people don't hear them because everyone has so many thoughts churning through their minds every day. When you get a thought or a message from your spirit guide, it's hard to distinguish it. It's like, where's that coming from? What should I follow? Is that my mind or is that my spirit guide? So he says the best way is through meditation. Sit quietly in your room by yourself, meditate, try to get rid of all the other thoughts out of your mind. And if you practice this regularly and get better at it, eventually the messages from your guides will start to come through a lot more clearer. You'll be able to understand where the message is coming from and what they're trying to tell you to do. And you'll be comfortable with listening to what they're telling you because you'll feel comfortable with it. So it's not an easy task. It wasn't meant to be. It's never meant to be, for most people, a direct contact like I have with Albert. He said that was a special one-off. And the reason he came to me so directly with a telepathic communication is that he wanted me to be able to write books about what he's telling me. So he wanted to be very specific with me. So he wanted to get his message out. And so that's why he talked to me directly. But most people don't get that chance. Some do, but it's not as common. And so people have to be very patient. They have to know they're never alone. Their spirit guides are always there. And they have to make special effort to try to hear what their guides are telling them.
Very cool. Now, if people are interested in getting your books, finding out more information about you, what's the best way they can do so? Website, social media, everything like that.
Yeah, best way, the focal point is my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com. If you can't remember how to spell that, just Google dancing on a stamp or one of my
Oh, I'll
books.
have it in the description as well.
Okay, yeah. So if you go to my website, there's a description of all of my books. There's excerpts that can be downloaded. There's book videos you can watch. I have links to all my social media sites like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. On my page, I have recordings of all of the radio shows I've been on, and so you can just access all of them. Like in your introduction, you said 120. It's actually up to 160 now, and so people can listen to all my radio show recordings. I post them on my YouTube channel. I also do occasional other videos that I just post on YouTube, and my email address is on my website. If people want to contact me with a question, with a comment, feel free to do so.
Awesome. Great conversation. I'd love to talk to you again in the future, Garnet, and you have a great evening.
Yeah, I'd love to be back on your show, and thank you for inviting me. And you have a great evening too, Chris.